Welcome to episode 34 of Stageworthy. I'm your host, Phil Rickaby. On Stageworthy, I interview people who make theater, actors, directors, playwrights, and more, and talk to them about everything from why they chose the theater to their work process and anything in between. You can find Stageworthy on Facebook and Twitter at StageworthyPod, and you can find the website at stageworthypodcast.com. If you like what you hear, I hope you'll subscribe on iTunes or Google Music or whatever podcast app you use and consider leaving a comment or rating. My guest is Bryan Boodhoo, a Hamilton-based playwright. His play, The Perpetual Sunshine Machine, just closed at the Hamilton Fringe Festival. Here we are. We're in the last few days of the Hamilton Fringe, and your show is Perpetual Sunshine Machine.
That's right.
I haven't had a chance to see that, but how has the run been going for you?
It's been going really well. This is the first time we've done it. It's a completely new work, so it's evolving before my eyes, which is sort of a good thing, I think.
In what way, when you say that it's evolving, how is it changing?
Well, I think it's interesting. I think the more we do it, the more the show changes. It becomes a little less comedic and scattered, and it becomes more about the essence of the show, which is sort of about family and loss, and it's really kind of got this dramatic core to it.
Great.
So it's changing in that way, I think.
Cool.
Yeah.
Are you finding that surprising to doing those discoveries during the run, or?
Frankly, yes.
Yeah.
I know shows change, and I kind of, when I wrote it and even and I directed it too, and I really didn't know what it was. I thought it was a cool show, so I try to write things that I like. And I think it's, somebody called it unique. I think it's unique. But it's interesting how I think as the actors and me upstairs, I think, get more comfortable with it and the audience changes, how the emphasis sort of goes toward, away from the comedic bits into the more, I guess, emotional bits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in terms of like that, all of this is a bit of a surprise. It's not quite what you expected in terms of how it's evolving. Can you tell me a little bit about the play itself? Sure.
So it's kind of a nutty play, right? It's about everything from time travel to the resurrection of Jesus to gold mining and absentee parents, right? So it's got a lot of things going on, but in my mind, what's it really about is sort of people's disconnection from their natural environment and, in a modern world. And particularly this one character. I mean, if I had to sum it up, which I think is this kind of great big thing, but it's, that's sort of what I was thinking at the time.
And when did you write this specifically for Hamilton Fringe? Did you write it and then get in the Fringe? Did you?
No, I think I wrote it. I actually, it was strange. I kind of started writing it. Rosemary Doyle does this thing every year where she sort of locks people up in her theater.
It's the 1,000 Monkeys.
Yeah.
I've done that 3 years in a row.
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh, geez, we might have been there last year.
Yeah, I was there last year. Yeah.
Oh, you know what? All right, so we're re-meeting.
Yeah, we're re-meeting.
Oh, yeah. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I love. That's one of my favorite things in the summer is to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you doing it this year?
I'm going to do it this year. Yeah. It's year 4.
Oh, I don't know. Is she doing it next weekend? Is that that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's always that
long
weekend.
So, Yeah, and I talked to her. She said she was coming down, but I don't know if she's actually doing it. She's thinking about it, which is good.
Well, I mean, she does have a show in the Hamilton Fringe.
Yeah.
Right now, so, yeah.
So anyway, I kind of started with that, and it was like 20 minutes, and I thought, well, I've got something. So I started writing it. I thought I wrote a 60-minute show. It didn't turn out to be 60 minutes. It's about 45 by the time, you kind of cut and do everything. And I'm fine with that. I think 45 minutes is a good length.
45 minutes for a Fringe show is a pretty good length. It gives... It's enough time to develop the story, and it's enough time to find a resolution in the story. Of course, you can't go to 60 minutes. I rarely see a play that's 90 minutes long that needs to be.
Yeah.
So I always look best official.
No, I agree with that, particularly in the context of Fringe. I think that you are seeing so many shows. The production value. I mean, even if you are well polished, just the nature of the beast, you cannot have that top-notch production value.
Yeah.
So I think it's nice to have it rest right into the story, get it in, get it out. Rely on the acting and the storytelling. So I think I agree with you. Like the 90-minute shows, although there are some really good 90-minute shows.
Yeah, that does happen. I just find it a rarity in terms of 90-minute shows that most shows that are 90 minutes need to be a little bit shorter.
Yeah.
How long have you been writing for?
Well, that's a loaded question. So I guess, I started writing creatively, I guess, in high school, and that was a long time ago. That was, I guess, 90-something. Let's put it that way. Yeah. But that was always more like poetry and short stories and things like that. And I think more on the dramatic front, I guess it's been about 5 years. So,
what is it that got you interested in writing for the stage?
Well, there was a while in my life I stopped writing whatsoever. I stopped doing anything. I just, got a job and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I think that, like, my friend, Sean, who's in another show here, he said, he started doing it. He said, why don't you try acting for this show? Why don't you come out and audition? I auditioned, and I got some minor Shakespeare role, which was awesome, right? Because I think you read Shakespeare, people read Shakespeare all the time, and until you are in a role, seeing the world through one of the character's eyes, I don't think you actually really get it.
I always think that with Shakespeare, that if you're reading it, if you're just sitting down and reading it, you're not getting it. It has to be seen as a play. You need to see actors saying the words, and then it works in a way that it doesn't on the page.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And even more than that, I think if you're in a Shakespeare show and you have the character, you get to see that world unfold from that perspective, which is just a completely unusual experience. Well, it's not. I mean, I guess all theater's like that, but my introduction into it, sort of as an adult, as an actor, was through Shakespeare.
And then, when did you go from doing that Shakespeare play to writing for the stage?
Probably about a year and a half, 2 years afterwards, maybe. I just, I thought I liked acting, but I think there were certain character traits that you have to have as an actor or a writer or what have you, right? I think it's just you sort of fall into one or the other. Sometimes both. Some people are really good at both.
Yeah.
And they have both character traits. And I mean, there's a certain type of person who likes to sit down at a desk and imagine things.
Yeah.
And then there's a certain type of person who likes to kind of get that head start and take what's on the written page and then reinvent it.
Yeah.
Which is a totally different skill. And I still like acting. I just find I find my energy doesn't go into it as much. And also it's it's a real, I do appreciate all the work that goes into acting and all the work that comes naturally to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But is a real pain for me.
Well, the thing is that as far as acting goes, I know if you don't enjoy it, then you probably shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I knew somebody when I was in theater school many years ago for whom, like, they said they want to be an actor, but they put themselves through hell. Like, they were miserable when they were rehearsing, they were miserable when they were performing, and at a certain point, I know the teachers were like, "So you don't seem to enjoy this. Why do you want to do it?" You know. Did you and you found that you didn't enjoy it so much, or that you found it difficult?
To tell you the truth, I find lines difficult. I hate memorizing lines. So that's kind of a limiting thing. As an actor, you're not going to get very far if you don't want to memorize lines.
Yeah.
And I also found that I kind of like I really enjoyed having small roles in bigger shows. Because you get to see the show unwind from a certain perspective.
Yes.
Right? As opposed to having the big role where during the show you're always lost in it, right? It doesn't matter what your perspective is. But even during rehearsal, it becomes more about the character and the character building as opposed to the storytelling and going through the storytelling. So in that sense, I kind of found I really like the story arc and moving through that story arc in this off, I don't know what to call it, but hands-off position, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I thought, well, if you want to do that, then this is being there in center stage, giving the soliloquy. That's not what you really want to do.
You mentioned that you stopped writing and doing anything creative for a while. You got yourself a day job.
Yeah.
Did you make the conscious choice to stop doing that?
In a way, yes. In a way, no. I mean, I think there was sort of, I have to concentrate my efforts on being an adult, which is always kind of a bad thing to do. Never think you need to be an adult. And certainly, when you start doing anything in the beginning of your career, there is a lot more time and stress and things involved. But I think the conscious decision was I need to stop. I need to concentrate on my career. And I did that for a couple of years. And then somebody said to me, and I started talking about the things I do, which are, at best boring, at worst mind-numbing. And then somebody said to me, you really are not living your life.
I mean, I did something similar many years ago. I did an epic project and then burned out doing that and spent about a month or two afterwards going through the motions of being an actor, and then I said to myself, I'm not doing this anymore. And I got a job and I stopped for maybe 3-4 years. And then all of a sudden somebody said, would you do this play with me? And I said, yes. And I thought, I said yes to that really quickly. I must really want to do it. And after that, I decided that I just wasn't going to sacrifice the creative aspect for the financial aspect. If I couldn't do both, then there was no point in doing the one.
No, I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if you can't, it's a balance, right? Yeah. It's sort of a sanity thing too.
Yeah, it's absolutely a sanity thing because it's a lot of day jobs are not necessarily creatively fulfilling.
Exactly.
And if you don't have something that's going to fulfill you creatively, then you're probably going to be miserable if you're a person who needs it.
And the funny thing is, I was reading an article, I can't remember, I think it was the New York Times, I don't know. But they looked at people who did things on the side creatively. Yeah. And, whether or not you ever become this person who can give up their day job is sort of besides the point. But they looked at how they functioned in the workplace. And they seem to actually bring a lot more to the table, right? Because I find Fringe and it's a place where it's such a safe space, particularly in Hamilton. I've had one short show in Toronto, and I know it's one of these places that is not necessarily as safe as Hamilton because people will kill you to your face, which is just
like at the Fringe.
No, this was at Esperanto.
Okay. Toronto has the luxury of the expectation that a show is finished, and they're not forgiving of experimentation.
Yes.
So that, like, it's fine if you announce something, come to our workshop production, you see the workshop production, and people come and they know what they're seeing. But if it goes up on a stage and people pay money to see the thing, they expect finished.
Yeah.
They expect polished, they expect finished, they expect a certain thing. And when they don't get it, they let you know.
I agree with that. I also think it's more than that. I'm not sure that Toronto's the best place for really... I think part of creating really cutting-edge new work is having productions that at times can be boring, right? Or just disconnecting and things like that. And I think that... I'm not sure that ultimately flies. There is a lot of stuff that is cutting-edge, but it always has that stamp, like it's won, whatever, Pulitzer Prize in drama, and then it comes over as the Canadian production. But I mean, that's part of being a bigger city.
I think it's one of those interesting things. I mean, every city has its own vibe of what it is and what it's going to be, and I think that I kind of get the feeling that Hamilton is still deciding what it's going to be.
Yeah.
So there's a little more space for experimentation.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Toronto knows what it's going to be, and you can't tell it differently.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, there is room for new things. They take time to develop. Now, interesting city, especially for their fringe, is Montreal.
Yeah.
Because Montreal, it's a very forgiving audience. If you're still working stuff out, that audience is very willing to sit there and let you do it, and they will not complain. They're good. They're like, oh, you're figuring it out. Okay, so maybe if I come back next time, it'll be different. They allow you the room to fail, which is something you don't get in a lot of places.
It was funny. I was in Montreal this year, not for Fringe, but I did go to Fringe. I was just at the same time, and it was a really interesting experience because you'd think that with a bigger city, you would, you wouldn't have that. But I think it's also because there's shows in French and English.
Yeah.
It's very diverse. It's very, it was very fun.
It's extremely diverse. It also has the advantage that the French influence is pretty heavy, so you get a lot more physical theater there than you get anywhere else. You get a lot more really interesting stuff that maybe doesn't fly somewhere else, but it flies there. It also manages to be small in a big city. It's a little smaller than Toronto, probably a little bit, maybe the same size as Hamilton. Because it's sandwiched between two of the biggest festivals. You've got the Francophone Music Festival on one side and the Jazz Festival on the other, and so Fringe kind of gets lost in that. But it's such a safe place. I know lots of people who like to start their Fringe tour in Montreal just to give themselves a good kickoff.
That makes sense. And you sort of work things out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would see that.
How long have you been doing the Fringe in Hamilton yourself? Is this your first year?
No, this is year number 4.
Nice.
This is year number 4. So I started off a friend, it's good to have friends in theater because they encourage you to do things that you might not necessarily think of doing yourself.
Absolutely.
So I got really lucky. The first play I wrote as an adult, I wrote it, I submitted it to this company in Edmonton, and they put it on as part of like a longer night.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's kind of like winning a lottery your first time out. You're playing every single week after that.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I put it on, and then I took it to. They put it on, and I didn't go out. It's pretty expensive.
It's a bit of a hike.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a hike.
Anyway, I read the reviews and went well, and then I kind of said, well, I never saw it. I might as well put it on myself.
Yeah.
And this is the first year, 4 years ago, I guess was the first year they did the gallery series. So the Fringe had already closed. All the shows were picked, but they had spots for the gallery series. Well, somebody said you should do this.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. I know I always find find it so important to make sure that you surround yourself with creative people, like, and to
intermission music.
Apparently. So we're gonna try to work. God damn it! Can we? Yeah. You were supposed to be like having the music on, so all right. What was I saying? I was saying that I've lost my complete train of thought. Where were we on?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's Leonard Cohen. It just drains your soul and mind.
Like I'm so relaxed now because it's Leonard Cohen. So you were talking about the gallery?
Yeah, the gallery series.
Yeah, and oh yeah, it was because it's good to surround yourself with creative people.
Yeah.
Because they'll push you in ways that you like. The things that they're doing inspire and push you, and the things that you do inspire and push them. It's always a good idea because you can't. I find that in the creative arts, in pretty much anything, you can't really just sort of. You can't stand alone.
Yeah.
You have to surround yourself with a community, and if you don't, you kind of get lost and you burn out.
And I think that's the thing about theater as opposed to, I guess when I was younger, and I remember the point where, it was funny you asked me this question before, I remember the point where I said, I'm done, is I had, just graduated and I had done what I wanted to do, which was publish a poem in a major Canadian literary magazine, which was Descant at the time, which unfortunately is now closed. I mean, after 150 issues, it's closed. But in one of them, you'll find a poem by me, and I thought this was the pinnacle of my poetic career. Yes. I'm done.
We're done. No more. Yeah.
But what I found about theater, which I really like, is you have to work with other people. Unless you're doing, like, you're writing, directing, doing your own show, but even then you need a stage manager.
Even then you need other people. You always need other people.
Yeah.
Even an audience. You need other people. And if you don't need you don't need an audience, you don't need anybody, why are you doing it?
Exactly.
If you don't even need, like, just write a novel. But I always find that the best thing about writing for theater is that you leave space for somebody else to make their interpretation. Now, unless you're Tennessee Williams, in which case then you write your entire, like, this is how the stage is going to look, and these are all the gestures, and this person makes, here's their backstory. But it's nice to as a playwright, to leave these empty spaces that the director and the actors are going to fill in.
Yeah, I think, it's funny, too, because I like directing my own stuff now, and I think I've become a lot less dictatorial about it than I used to be, right? Like, because you get taught sort of make sure everybody's on book, make sure you've got your blocking and things like that. And I'm sort of, this is just my idea of what the character should what the character should say too, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not sure I've got this totally down.
I mean, in Canada we don't do a whole lot of workshopping in plays. In the US, there's a lot of workshops.
Yeah.
You workshop stuff, you workshop stuff, you workshop stuff. And in Canada, we just sort of basically get to you get your first few drafts done. You decide that you're finished. You put your hands on your pants. You're done. You're going to go to production. But then you put it in the hands of an actor, and the actor might say, these words don't quite work. And if you don't have, that's why it's important to have, like, actors read it early on, just to make sure that the words work in somebody's mouth.
Oh, absolutely. Or worse is that they'll think that but never say it.
Yes. Yeah.
Right, and you see that, and that's why I like directing my own stuff at least sort of at the outset, is because I can see somebody struggling with a word and not telling me. Yeah. I'm like, okay, we need to change that.
Yeah. It's important to be able to. I mean, I find in writing in general, but in theater especially, it's important to not be married to necessarily your text or your general idea of what the character is going to be or things like that, because the actor has to be able to fill that, well, especially early on. The actor has to, especially the first actor, they're going to inform that so much by what they do.
And it's funny, even when you see big name shows, big name musicals even, was speaking with Lila Miklos last week, and it's funny. She did cabaret this year, and she had a very specific idea of what she wanted to bring to cabaret, and that's what helps the show evolve and stay vibrant. Is actors coming to it, and even when the text is set in stone, more or less, I don't think they ever really are, unless you're Samuel Beckett and won't let anybody change anything. But I think once they're set, you still want to have that actor imbue it with something that they believe in.
Yeah, they have to.
Yeah,
they have to. The actor has to put something of themselves into it. The actor comes to the text and then makes it. If you're too rigid on how it's going to be said, how it's going to be performed, then you should probably just do it yourself.
Yeah.
So, since we're like in the last, is it 4 days of the Fringe? 5 days of the Fringe?
Yeah, we've got what? Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 4 days.
4 days of the Fringe. Can you talk about? Are there any lessons that you've learned this Fringe, either about your play, about playwriting, about theater in general?
Well, I'll tell you one. I think. I guess the lesson that it's always a lesson that it's always out there. Start early, because you can never give yourself too much time.
That's very true.
So start early. Yeah. But that's a lesson I've known for a while. I just seem to, ignore it. But I also think the lesson I have this time is, I used to kind of think of the Fringe as the end of the process, and I don't anymore. Like, I think it's been a good Fringe for us, but I don't see this as the end of the process. I see this play and some of the actors I've worked with, Carlos I've worked with now 3 plays in a row. I see the play as having a life on its own, and I see myself going away and doing some more stuff with it. And definitely sort of working with the people and staying in contact with the team, right? Because it's like the production company is based on my stuff, so it's always people are in and out and whatever. But I think that the biggest lesson is that Fringe is sort of just another step. Yeah. And I'm not sure, and I guess the other thing is, too, I'm not sure there's an end step anywhere.
No, there doesn't have to be. The thing that I've always seen is that Fringe, regardless of what city it is and where it is a starting point. And Fringe is an opportunity to get your play seen, and then to refine it, take it further, and eventually, who knows where you go. There are people who've, let's say,
gone to Mirvish.
Sorry? The Mirvish, the Kink in My Hair.
Yeah.
You've got the Drowsy Chaperone, which went to Broadway.
Yeah.
You've got Kim's Convenience, which toured Canada, played at Soul Pepper in Toronto, and it's now a TV series.
And Theatre Aquarius in Hamilton.
There you go. Yeah. And I've seen people who are doing shows that are, they've taken them to various fringes and they're doing tours around Europe. You've got, was it Homer's Macbeth, Simpson's Macbeth, something like that? Rick I can't remember his last name. Rick Miller toured that for years, doing Macbeth as the Simpsons characters, and that's like bread and butter shit right there. And, you can do that stuff.
I've paid a lot, full price tickets, a lot of money to see shows that started off as Fringe shows.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, why did I pay $10 when I got the chance?
No, because Fringe can be risky. You don't know. Especially, I love the adventurous first weekend people at Fringe. Yeah. I love the people who take a chance on stuff, because all you have is what the artist tells you at that point, or what a reviewer or what the theater writer for a newspaper says. These are the things I think are going to be good. But you don't know. You don't know. I love the people who go that first weekend, because they're the ones who are like, I'll take a chance on anything.
Yeah, no, it's very true. And for the amount of time and money that you're taking a chance, I think it's worth it, right? You'll see, you buy a pass, you get 6 shows, and you just go. and whatever
even,
sticks.
Even if by a pass, even if you pay $10 and the show turns out to be not what you expected or not as good as you expected, it's only $10 and it's only an hour.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world. And I always see, if I see a bad show, I try to see what do I learn from it. It's important to try to take something away. If you're a theater person, if you're not a theater person, if you're just an audience member, maybe what you'll learn is that you don't like that kind of thing. But
well, it's funny. I saw I can't even remember the show, but it's a really famous European playwright, and I was talking to somebody afterwards, somebody I went with. I said, I really didn't like this. I would have changed this, and this, and I thought the story would have been a lot better. And she goes to me, why don't you just email the playwright? I'm like, no, I don't think it'll go over that well. And then I thought to myself, but maybe I'll just write my own show.
Yeah. It's, have you ever done a talk back after one of your shows? Sit down with the audience and get the audience to talk to you about the show and stuff like that?
I have, yeah.
I've done a number of those. And there's one, the way that I prefer to do it and the way that it's most often done, and they're two different things. The way that I prefer to do it is that I decide in advance what I want to find out from my audience, and those are the questions that I ask them.
Yeah.
The kind I don't like is just turning to the audience and say feedback. What do you think? Because the feedback that you so often get is, this is how I would have written it.
Yeah.
Which isn't necessarily helpful, because they're not writing it.
No, and people could write their own shows. In fact, that's
right.
Good inspiration to write your own show.
Absolutely it is. It's just that it's not, as somebody who's trying to get feedback for this show, how you would have written it is not necessarily the right thing. But what you did is take that feedback and turn it into something of your own, which is I think what the artist does.
Yeah. The other thing I think about talkbacks too is, and they can't be helped. I think some of them tend towards being really for the audience, right? And it's really about exposing the process and things like that, which is fine, and I think that helps. But I think it's better if the talkback at least starts off with what's the audience's reaction, and like you say, what do you want out of this? Did this work?
Because, you're right. There are two kinds of talkbacks. There's a talkback that follows, say, a workshop or a stage reading or something like that, which is usually to get feedback for the show. And then there's the talkback that comes after a performance, which is for the audience. So they are two different things. And of course, the ones that are for the audience, if you don't direct them at all, then you get whatever you want, whatever the audience chooses to do, right? I saw a production of the Rocky Horror Show that had a talkback after it. It was kind of a disastrous talkback. The show was brilliant. One of the best Frankenfurters that I've ever seen outside of Tim Curry, and that was Adam Brazier playing that role, which is a very difficult role to make your own.
Yes, it is.
And he did an amazing job, but a lot of the talkback focused on this minutia that has really very little to do with the play itself.
Yeah.
Really, you never know what you're going to get with that.
Well, I actually found one of the best sort of audience-facing talkbacks. I saw 12 Angry Men. I think it was Can Stage. I can't remember. It was in Toronto. Mm-hmm. And they brought in people from the legal community. And that, I thought, was brilliant.
That's interesting.
Because you were able to come into the process, and the audience was able to see that everything beyond just the story, all that context. That was really cool.
That's a really interesting way to do it, to make it not about the actors. Because you know what? That audience might have questions about the law. But these actors are just I'm reading lines.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've done some research, but not a lawyer. But to bring in experts on the topic, to have that a part of the talkback is really a great idea.
And I think I think it was Greenspan too. They got some big names.
Wow.
Actually, you know what? It was a Mervis show.
Okay. Yeah. Well.
That makes sense.
Yeah. That's gonna bring in.
And that's gonna bring in Greenspan. Yeah. But I think he loved it. I mean, he loved being up there, seeing the show, and being able to talk to a real audience about, very basically what he does.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really interesting way to do it. To do that, and that does sound like it's something that Mervis could do, is to bring in the lawyers and stuff.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think Mirvish, over the years, over the last couple of years anyway, has done things that really impressed me, like The Kink in Their Hair, Arcadia, when that got brought into Toronto. Like a lot of things that I think are helpful for building an audience in Toronto that's not just in the mainstream theater.
Mirvish with having the Panasonic Theater in Toronto, because the Panasonic is a theater that you can't put the usual stuff that Mirvish brings in there. Usually Mirvish is doing like the big Broadway shows, and those don't work on that small stage. You have to bring in smaller stuff. So then you end up with some awesome stuff like Potted Potter and stuff like that that's come out of like the Edinburgh Fringe.
Yeah.
It's like ends up like coming to doing a tour and ending up on that stage, which is amazing. Mirvish has been getting a little bit more adventurous over the last few years, bringing in some great stuff. They've been doing for a while there. They were only really doing their own. They were just bringing in touring shows, but now they're producing a little more,
which is nice.
Yeah, it's great to see, because it's always great when I get to go to that theater and see a lot of Canadian faces on the stage, which for a while we weren't seeing there so much. But I understand why that happened.
Yeah, and I think with other theaters, and there's so many theaters in Toronto that create a lot of good work. And I mean, I think Toronto is a great theater town.
Yeah.
And we're actually pretty lucky to be 45 minutes away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But there's so much talent coming out of Factory, Tarragon, even the really small places that just what do you do with it? And then of course Mirvish gives you the ability to sort of use it, which is great.
The thing that really excites me in the Toronto scene, and I haven't seen a lot of it here yet, but I'm hoping that it sort of spreads over. In fact, actually, we do sort of have something like that in some of the gallery spaces. It's the storefront style theater, like the Red Sandcastle, like the storefront in Toronto, where independent theater is thriving because the theater space is affordable in a way that even the Tarragon, Factory, Passamarais are not in terms of theater rental. And so it gives you the opportunity to really do stuff so the indie scene can really flourish in a way that is more difficult when theater space is so expensive.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think the I had this kind of chat with somebody, and I think the Staircase is sort of in that area. It's much bigger than your average storefront, right? It's probably 2 or 3 times as big, but it's not. People put up shows there all the time.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, but I do find the storefront phenomenon in Toronto great.
Yeah. Because
you get access to so many shows that are not going to have the. You have to have a big budget to get into Factory or Tarragon. You just have to.
Well, you can sacrifice a lot of other things to get in there. I mean, you can fundraise and just worry about paying for that space.
Yeah.
But I know people just put it on their credit cards, but it is an expensive way to do it. But those storefront theaters are really great incubators for a lot of really great talent. And I'm so glad to see people in Toronto like Kat Sandler and saw a show. Do you know Sex T-Rex? It's a comedy troupe.
No.
Fucking brilliant. And they've done a lot of stuff with storefront and things like that. So, and all the stuff that happens at the Red Sandcastle.
Yeah.
Including the Thousand Monkeys Playwriting Festival, which is one of my favorite things. And just like all of that stuff, it just sort of like fosters this independent theater in a way that it's sort of like Fringe outside of the Fringe in a way.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
It reminds me a little bit of the Mainline Theater in Montreal, which is the theater that basically hosts the Montreal Fringe. And they basically try to keep a Fringe vibe going all year round, which is really awesome.
And it's nice because they have that audience there.
Yeah.
Right? So when Fringe comes around, there's people there willing to see shows like that, right? They're not coming and expecting big budget New York musical.
One of the things that's kind kind of funny because this is my first time at the Hamilton Fringe. The fringes that I'm most familiar with, Toronto, obviously, and I've done some other ones in Canada. So in Toronto, if the show's going to be popular, there's a line.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first year that you could buy 100% of your tickets. The second year, you could buy 100% of the tickets online before the show.
Yeah.
Which last year was a huge problem because it wasn't well advertised that people would show up to buy tickets and be told that it was sold out. But one thing that you have is that people line up for shows. People don't tend to line up for shows for Hamilton. They tend to roll in about 10 minutes before the doors open.
Yeah.
And sort of get their tickets and then just sort of roll in. So it's hard to flyer a line. But I've noticed that there doesn't seem to be there's not the concern that a show's going to sell out.
No, I think this year has been a little strange because there have been shows in the past where there's definitely sellouts. I don't know why that is. I actually think the reason why it is this year is because the quality of shows have been just really high across the board.
Yeah.
So it's not like there's a ton of standout shows because there's not a lot of shows that I wouldn't want to see.
Right.
So that's kind of, I don't know if that's helped or whatever, but it doesn't have that it hasn't had that sellout this year.
Because in Toronto, there's shows that sell out, and you just can't get tickets for it.
Well, I think that's really great for other shows in the same venue.
Oh, that's perfect for other shows in the same venues or nearby venues. If there's a Factory, Tarragon, and Passamarais where there's two spaces, it works out really well for that other space to be able to. Oh, so show's sold out. Come and see my show
around the corner,
right here, same building.
You already paid your $5 for your button. Don't go home now.
The Toronto Fringe doesn't do the button. Actually, fringes that do the button, as far as I know, are there's only a few. Calgary, Hamilton, and London, I think.
Oh, interesting.
A lot of other ones either do something like the bucket speech.
Yeah.
They get people and you get a button, you can pay $5. That's the Toronto model. Edmonton sells the program.
Yeah.
Edmonton sells the program. The people buy it.
Well, I would.
For Edmonton? Yeah. Oh, you need that.
Yeah?
Yeah, so the program, people let, I don't remember how much it was, $12, something like that for the program. And so, and that's a city that can do it.
Yeah.
Not everybody can do it.
Well, when you're the first in the country.
Well, exactly. You're the biggest in the country too, so you can do a lot of things. But yeah, I think I love when I get somebody who's come just to see a show because we get the proximity that Hamilton has to Toronto allows people to come from Toronto and do a show, which means that they've coaxed a bunch of their friends to come up and see their show. And I love being able to try to convince those people to come and see another show.
Yeah, it's
sometimes
interesting.
They're open to it, but sometimes you get, hey, can I tell you about my show? No.
Yes, you get that too.
Okay, I get it.
They've just sat through 2 hours of traffic potentially. Yeah. They've come in, they've seen their show, they've done whatever they feel they have to do, and now they're
I
going
just
home.
feel like if you sat through 2 hours of traffic, don't be in a rush to get back on the highway. Come and see another show.
I would be like that too. But yeah.
Exactly.
And I think it's funny too when I went to Montreal Fringe this year, as an audience member, my tolerance for watching shows was much lower than it is for Fringe here, because I can see, I could see 4 shows a day, 4 or 5 shows a day here. Yeah. There, I think after about 2, I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm gonna grab a beer.
Huh. That's interesting. Why do you think that was?
I'm not exactly sure. I mean, part of it is that in Hamilton Fringe, you're more connected to everybody. The artists. You want to see their shows, and you will sacrifice sleep to see their show. Yeah. In Montreal, actually Colette was there, so I knew her. But other than that, you don't really know the artists, and you're just there to enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, if you were there specifically for the Fringe, and like hanging out at the fringe tent, going to the 13th hour, you probably find more that you want to see. But it's hard when you just have a program.
Yeah.
Right? And when you're in a place that you know, you're looking for names that are familiar. Like, I'm going to see that person, I want to see that person's show. You're a little less likely to experiment because you don't know, like, what is this show? You know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, Bryan, are you on social media?
I am on social media.
Yeah. What's your Twitter handle?
I'm not on Twitter.
Okay.
I'm on Facebook.
Facebook. Do you have a website?
No, we have our Facebook page.
Okay.
We're facebook.com/BeRightBackProductions, 2 E's to distinguish us from everybody else.
Of course, yeah.
And I think that's about it.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks so much for talking with me today. It's been great.
Thank you, Phil.